Hello everyone and welcome to my overall review of the Lingbao Jiguanshi keyboard. I still am having insane trouble pronouncing that. But nonetheless, if you haven't seen my unboxing video yet, I suggest you do that now. I'll put the link in the video's description down below. And I'm also going to put a link to another YouTuber's channel that reviewed this same keyboard, Cryozan22. I'm actually a fan of his channel. I watch it quite a bit. If you're into mechanical keyboards at all, I highly recommend you also subscribe to his channel if you have not yet, as he reviewed this same keyboard. So it'll kind of give you a different perspective on it compared to the one that I'm about to give. So you can get two different viewpoints on it. He actually purchased his online. Mine was provided free of cost as a review sample. Continuing on. The keyboard itself is a TenKeyLess RGB mechanical keyboard. As you can see, this is one of the patterns here that the keyboard has to offer among several others, such as this, where it's kind of like a snake pattern. You can turn it off. You can do this kind of flashy thing where it reacts to you typing. You can do, this here, just do solid, or where it can fade in and out. There's quite a few different options of patterns here. But it is RGB in the sense that every row of keys has its own dedicated color. It's not per independent RGB backlighting like, say, Corsair, where every individual one can go different colors. But for the price, I was not expecting that. The price right now on this keyboard in the open market, I believe, is around just under $40 US shipped, which is a relative bargain. This particular review sample, and this is actually something where Cryozan and I got slightly different results. He bought his online and his came with Gateron switches. Mine came with Otemo Blues. I don't know if you're going to be able to see that on the camera or not, but they are transparent housing Otemo Blue switches. They are a clicky tactile switch, and they do feel pretty good. They actually feel a tiny bit smoother than the Cherry MX Blues, but a tiny bit heavier. I'd say the weighting varies from 50 to 55 grams compared to that of the 45 gram on the Cherry MX Blues. So they do feel a tiny bit stiffer, but not overly so by any stretch. The keyboard itself kind of has this metal top plate. It's not what the switches themselves are mounted to, but it's kind of a thin metal plate, gives it the keyboard a little bit of added rigidity. You have the keyboard's logo right here and a little hole where the eye is. That does not light up. It is a permanently attached cord. It's not removable, but on a TenKeyLess, I don't see that as much of an issue. On the back here, you have the rubber feet toward the front, and you have these flip-out feet here, which are unfortunately not rubber coated, but the keyboard stays in place fairly well without much of an issue. Now, a few things I really want to go over with this keyboard. I'm going to start by covering some of the pros, things I was pleasantly surprised by. First of all, the price. Under $40 for a mechanical keyboard, TenKeyLess, with RGB, this many backlighting modes, and while they're not the thickest keycaps in the world, nor should you expect it to be at $40 US, they are double shot backlit keycaps. I mean, yeah, they're not the highest quality in the world, as they're kind of on the thin side, although I think mine look a little bit better than the ones that Cryozan got. You can see some of the little markings right there from the factory. But that's pretty impressive for a $40 board, considering much more expensive keyboards out there, like Keyed Up Labs 87ES, or even some of the ones from Keyboard Paradise or other brands just have a very cheap laser etched if you're lucky, or sometimes even pad printed like on the friggin' DOS keyboards, and those keyboards cost well over $100, whereas this is $40 and it's got double shot ABS backlit caps. I think a lot of you manufacturers out there could really learn a little bit right there from this company, who's a relative unknown up-and-comer, and even they knew enough to at least provide double shot caps. So if you don't ever want to replace these, well, you don't really have to. Are they the best keycaps in the world? No, they're not, but they're still leagues better than a lot of the stock keycaps on a lot of boards that cost 3 to 4 times the price of this keyboard. So bravo for that. For 40 bucks, I'm impressed. As mentioned, this does have the Otemo blue switches. It comes also with the option of Otemo browns, Otemo blacks, and Otemo reds. I have not seen this with Gatorons other than in Cryozan's review, but again, your mileage may vary. Now, the layout itself, this is something that I'd kind of have to put in the pro or con category, depending on how you feel about it. As you can see, it has this ISO enter key, but it's not a full ISO layout. It's a little strange in that respect. We've got these standard keycap sizing down here and everything, which is much appreciated, but it's a little strange where you have this 1U sized slash key here, and then you've got the ISO enter here. It's kind of a strange option. If they were to ever do a version 2 of this keyboard, I'd very much like to see, especially if they're going to market in the US, to do an ANSI style enter key instead of the ISO. I would much rather that. But given the fact that it comes with double shot, keycaps, at least you don't have to go and look about replacing those right away. So, I'm willing to look past that considering. But in the future, if you're watching this, if you do a version 2, I would rather see an ANSI enter key for ones that you market to the United States. But I know that wasn't your primary, market right off, so I understand. But other than that, the keyboard feels fairly solid for the price. You've got this metal top plate here. You've got the plastic on the bottom, but it doesn't feel weak or flimsy at all. The stabilizers are a little bit odd. They're like a combination of Co-Star, but with springs. Now, I'm not even going to try and take this off again because I almost broke it the first time. But as you can see, you do have the wires here, like the Co-Star. But if you can see it in the camera here, right there, it also has these little additional pegs right here with springs, which actually make the spacebar feel much more consistent, and it springs back nicely. It actually kind of feels... It feels nice. It's not quite as rattly or loud as a lot of Co-Star stabilizers I've dealt with, which is why I usually personally prefer cherry stabilizers. I'm not a big fan of the Co-Star. Again, very subjective, of course. So I definitely like that. To me, it was an improvement. They feel very nice. They don't feel mushy like cherry, but they're not overly rattly like the Co-Star ones are. So thus far, I've spoken very highly of this board for $40. What are the cons? Well, besides the slightly odd layout, which I mentioned, the only other con I can really think of for the price, and again, I am speaking to this in terms of its price. This is not going to compare to a $150 keyboard, but for what it offers an impressive amount at a $40 price point. I would have figured this would be closer to $60 or slightly more. So at the $40 range, it's quite impressive, especially offering a full TenKeyLess layout as opposed to the Magic Force board, which was one of my favorite budget board picks, which is more of a, I don't know what you'd call it, 65, 70, 75% layout, forgive me offhand, but this is actually a full TenKeyLess, so that's kind of nice for the price here. But personally, I really think it's nice for what you pay for this board at $40. I don't know what else you're going to get that's going to compete with it. But the two other minor quirks I had, one of which Cryozan pointed out, but I will reiterate as he's quite correct, and it is a bit odd, is if you look, the switches actually are kind of pushed down a bit and they're not mounted to this top plate. So with the stock caps, that's not a problem, but here is the issue with that. If I take a shorter profile keycap, such as a cherry keycap, for example, here is a cherry PBT keycap, and if I put it on that, a lot of the times it's going to bottom out on this top plate before the key actually registers, and so that could kind of be a problem. So it doesn't always register if you use a shorter profile keycap. So that is something that could be an issue for some people if they're planning on putting shorter profile keycaps on the board. With the stock caps here, it's a non-issue. But the other area I can see it being an issue possibly again is any other shorter profiles like TCS or Cherry or anything akin to that, and possibly even some keycaps that are considered OEM, since that's not a standard size and it could very well be a little too short for the board and thus creating an issue. So do bear that in mind. The one other thing that Krausen pointed out, and I don't think it's as bad as he mentioned, but I am going to let you listen for yourself, make your own judgment, is that he mentioned that this was one of the loudest boards he had ever heard. Now, maybe that was his particular keyboard and the Gatorons were louder, I'm not sure. But this one has the Otema Blues, not the Gatorons, and he was claiming it was as loud as not louder than the Model F, and I think that's a bit of a stretch. Is it loud? Yes, it absolutely is. As loud as the Model F? You know, judge for yourself, but I don't think so. Here's a brief sound sample for you. As you can see, it's a little bit louder than Cherry MX Blues for certain, and louder than, you know, some of the other boards I've tested, definitely. But louder than Buckwing Springs, I'd say that's a bit of a stretch, at least with my review sample. His did seem a bit loud in the video, so I'll say that. But if you have a lot of neighbors around you, this may not be the best switch to pick, but they do have browns and reds and blacks available if that's a concern to you. But I'm just letting you hear this for the blues because that's the loudest of the switches that they offer. Personally, I never found it to be an issue, and I didn't notice it being too much louder than Cherry MX Blues were. But overall, I would definitely recommend the board for its price. There's not much else out there that can compete to it price-wise. The Magic Force 68 would be your next closest option at right about the same price. But that one doesn't come with double shot keycaps as stock, nor is it a full TenKeyLess size. So if you like having that full TenKeyLess layout, if you can deal with the few minor cons that I mentioned, this is really a fantastic option for $40. I mean, and especially if you're into the RGB little light show here. You know, I personally just like to keep the lights on solid. I don't like to put some of these flashier modes, but if you're into that, this has quite a few of those modes for you to play and tinker with. At $40, it really is a steal. And if you just want a cheap first board and you want to experience the backlighting and you don't want to buy aftermarket double shot keycaps, for the few cons it has, I'd say it's more than worth the money and not a bad starter board at all. I have had this on my desk for this entire week as my only keyboard. I have not used any of my other boards, and that's quite a few for modern keyboards. And I didn't feel as though I was any kind of a disadvantage at all. One other thing I will comment on that Krausen also covered in his video was that he did do a switch hitter test on it, which is a piece of software that can detect switch chatter. Now, if you start pounding a ton of keys at the same time, it will show up with some switch chatter on switch hitter. However, in actual use, like typing, and my words per minute is between 90 and 100 for reference, gaming or anything of the sort, I never had a single issue with switch chatter. So I'd either have to say that it is a problem with the switch hitter software recognizing this board improperly or something akin to that, or it could just be that the board is not, N key rollover, and that it is possibly, say, 6, 8, or 10, or something akin to that. But in actual use with gaming and or typing, I had no chattering occur. It only showed up in switch hitter. So personally, I did not have an issue with it. But this is the new TenKeyLess RGB from Lingbao, and again, for $40, I'd grab it. I really, it has some cons to it, but for the price, for $40, if I only had $40, I'd be perfectly happy with this keyboard. I didn't, again, feel as though it was any kind of disadvantage or that, I had any glaring flaw that drove me nuts about it. Is it as good as, some of my $150, $200 keyboards? No. But for $40, it's a damn good deal, honestly. I'd probably buy one as a backup board were I not given one as a review sample. So take that as you will, but for $40, yeah, go for it. So that's been my brief review and commentary on the Lingbao Jiguanshi, God, I'm probably butchering that name, RGB keyboard with Otemu blue switches. If you have any further questions I did not cover in the review, please by all means ask in the comment section below, and I will do my best to answer them for you. Is there anything I didn't cover you'd like to know? Please by all means ask. If you want me to compare this to any other switches or any of the keyboards, let me know and I will be happy to do so. As always, thanks for watching. Make sure to like, comment, rate, and subscribe, as it helps me greatly with the channel and also helps me get other review samples from other companies so I can show them to you to see if it's something that interests you. Thank you and have a good one.